Hello, I'm Mr. Glass, and this is my first video basically to help GCSE History students pass their AQA exam. In particular, we're focusing on Germany 1819 to 1945, democracy and dictatorship. If you don't do this unit, then the exam questions might help a little bit, but really you should just find one that is more to your units. So let's just stop and remember what this unit is about. Ultimately, it's in the title, from uh, democracy to dictatorship. But actually, what it's about is first the Kaiser, Germany, World War One, the growth of that democracy under Weimar, the collapse of that democracy under Great Depression, and then the rise of the authoritarian through the Enabling Act, and then the dictator under Night of the Long Knives, Hitler and the Nazis, and what life was like. And in each stage, the whole point is how did it impact ordinary Germans? What are the differences? What are the comparisons? How did life change? So let's have a look at part one. And just stop if you want for a moment and think if you're revising or you're about to do the exam tomorrow. Well, what's Germany like economically, politically, socially? Pause if you want, but basically I'm moving on. So, economically speaking, Germany pre-war is extremely strong. It's industrialized. It's a rival to the biggest in the world, which is Great Britain. Its employment is great. Everyone's got a job. The pay is not amazing, but the middle class and the upper class are doing brilliantly and they're happy. Politically, however, it's not so forward thinking. It's still got the Kaiser, who is an authoritarian. He doesn't have to listen to the Reichstag, which is, yes, democratically voted in, and in particular, only men aged 25 and up can vote, women cannot. And the people who keep winning in the Reichstag are the SPD, and they're socialists, so they're left wing. But again, remember, the Kaiser doesn't have to listen to them. That's what makes him authoritarian. And what is it that Germany or the upper class and the Kaiser want for Germany? Well, the economy is good, and they're basically saying, what next? Well, we want our place in the sun. We want our world policy, world politic, i.e., colonies, empire. They want to grow stronger. They want to get even bigger. And that's about it. The only people he listens to are the upper class, the nobles, the proud Prussians, the militaristic Prussians, who all basically are in the Bundesrat, like the House of Lords. Socially, we got this socialism rising in the working class in particular, who are saying, you know what, we're the backbone of the new Germany. We want better conditions, we want better pay. The working class in particular, but ultimately Germany is very traditional. And you can see in the images there that you've got the industrialization going on. You've got the Kaiser, you've got everyone wanting a slice of the pie, and you've got at the top there essentially a clash between socialism and the Kaiser, i.e., workers' rights, workers' pay versus the Kaiser's desire for Weltpolitik, and that is in the naval laws, i.e., the Kaiser wants um, ships, and he takes out loans through the naval laws to build them to have an empire, and the socialists are going, hang on, why not pay us more? Okay, let's have a look at the next one. This is World War One and Treaty of Versailles. So again, if you're revising, jot down some things on pause, but I'm moving on. So economically, the key thing to remember is Germany is exhausted from war. They've spent it all trying to win, and they are now broke. They're empty. They've got no resources left, sort of thing. The factories have nothing to do. They are burnt out. And to really kick them in the teeth, the Treaty of Versailles says, yep, 6.6 billion reparations, please. Now, overall, the country's broke. That means working class people don't have jobs, middle class people, their pay might be slashed, but basically everyone's doing well, except some upper class Germans have actually gone rich because they own those factories, which, yeah, they may be burnt out now, but they did work right up to the end, and basically there was some real money made. Politically speaking, most importantly, the Kaiser abdicates, ushering in the SPD and a new democracy under Weimar, and then have this turbulent time of essentially, well, those who signed the treaty are called November criminals, of course, but essentially you've got this political vacuum, i.e., no one really in charge of Germany. And importantly, there's no more Kaiser, so big, big changes. And then if you think about it, it used to be the rich in charge, essentially, the nobles, the Bundesrat. Now that's all being thrown upside down. Socially, the people during the war were starving because of the blockade. They couldn't get medicine, so all these people are dying. You got orphans, you got widows, and why is that important? Ultimately, because men were still the main breadwinner, then the moneymaker, and thus all these people are suffering now because, quite simply, um, there's no money in Germany and there's no jobs for that would pay the same for women as they do men, that sort of thing. You've got all these men coming back injured from the war. They get their pensions are really low, so in other words, everyone's really struggling. And in the background, of course, is the attitude of this treaty is not fair. It was a diktat forced upon us. Now let's have a look at actual Weimar now. So politically, as I've said, we've gone from having an authoritarian Kaiser to essentially, although unstable, a really, really democratic system in Weimar Germany. Why is it really democratic? Because it's actually what's called proportional representative democracy, and that's really democratic. You don't really need to worry about what that means, but basically, proportional representation means two things: highly democratic, two, often a very weak divided government. Now, in good times, it's not a problem. In difficult times, it's harder to make decisions. Now, why else is it very democratic? Because both men and women over 20 can vote. But politically, Weimar struggles straight away with coups, putschs. The Spartacists, inspired by Russia in 1917, they try to grab power in Berlin. These are the extreme socialists, the Spartacists, the communists, led by Luxembourg. It's only stopped when ex-soldiers called the Free Corps basically step in and say, no, you don't. It's bloody battles on the streets of Berlin. It's really horrific. It's very vicious, and it's literally fighting for the future of Germany now. Is it going to be communist? Is it going to be authoritarian? Is it going to be democratic? And just after the communists are put down, one of these Free Corps leaders, Cap, says, you know what? I'll do it. I'll be in charge because you know what? I'm the one with the guns. I'm the one with the soldiers. He takes over Berlin, but basically the working class go, no, no, you don't. And they all go on strike, and Cap realizes he's not going to start shooting people just because they're on strike. So he basically steps down and he walks away. So Weimar survives by the skin of its teeth, and just when I thought it was going to recover, the second installment of the reparations is due in 1923, and the Ruhr gets occupied. And they say, look, we've been down this road, we can't fight, just go on strike, eventually they'll leave, we'll pay your wages until then. So, of course, they print the money. And as you hopefully know, that causes the value of that money to sink because there's too much of it, and everyone starts charging more, and you have this horrible inflation. But it's not just inflation, it's hyperinflation. Now, why is that important? Well, economically speaking, working class people are no longer needed in jobs which don't exist anymore. So the economy crashes, loads of working class get fired, the middle class, some of them get fired, many of them do, all their jobs get cut in pay. The most important, the middle class, all their savings, let's say you had £1,000 in the bank right now, hyperinflation kicks in, that £1,000 is worth 10 pence or £100. It would destroy you. Everything you've been saving for is suddenly gone overnight. So you've got some real problems economically in Germany. But Weimar has thrown a lifeline from the Americans. The Dawes and Young Plan. Young Plan basically repackages the reparation installments so it's easier to pay. The Dawes Plan also gives them money to loans, US loans, to pay it, to invest in their own economy through public work schemes and things like that, hospitals, schools, all that stuff. And let's not forget, Stresemann is the one who's doing all this for Weimar Germany. He introduces the new currency, and part of the deal brings Ford and Gillette factories, which means jobs basically are back in Germany. And this ushers in the golden age, Germany's 1920s golden age, which lasts from 1923 till 1929. So what is that golden age? Basically, it's American loans funding economic booms in Germany, and we see a absolute orgy of living. And what I mean by that is you have German people trying to put the past behind them. So, for instance, you have all this anti war attitude, i.e., it's not worth it, let's not do it ever again, exemplified exemplified by the book, which was a bestseller, All Quiet on the Western Front. Um, you then have all these people partying, just trying to live life, to the full. They're going out, they're drinking, they're smoking, they're having sex, they're going to jazz clubs, all this sort of thing. Men are dressing as women, women are dressing as men. There's no more barriers. All the traditional barriers are being broken down. Best exemplified by the famous actress Marlene Dietrich in the picture there, dressing as a man. You got these new technologies through cinema and new films being made, such as Metropolis, which was at the cutting edge of technology at the time. And why is this all important? Because basically, Germans and Germany are booming, and they're not letting anything hold them back. You've got the Bauhaus movement and all this sort of stuff. Now, of course, not everyone is like that, and that Otto von Dick's painting right there at the bottom, you probably have seen it somewhere. Ultimately, you got to think about all the people who lost their jobs, all the people who never were able to recover from the economic crash. They've lost everything. They're in the gutter. And the famous painting there on the corners, you'll see ex-soldiers with injuries. Their pensions are still low. They've still got nothing. There's women turning to prostitution, that sort of thing. Ultimately, it's about, you know what, only look forwards. All the left behind are being forgotten. And it's in this vacuum, not this vacuum, sorry, just at this point when, of course, Hitler tries his Munich Putsch. Remember, Hitler did it in 1923, and that was just the wrong moment because the Dawes and Young plan kicked in, so it was starting to recover. And ultimately, Hitler tries, he gets everyone in the Munich beer hall. Von Kahr escapes. The police basically just chase the Nazis away the next day. It's a little gun battle, and he's arrested. His followers either flee, thrown in jail, or basically disappear. Hitler's in jail for 9 months, meant to be 2 years. It's a short sentence. He's able to wear his uniform, wear his Iron Cross, and he's able to just rage against the treaty. You know what? Why is this important? For a couple of reasons. Number one, Hitler says, you know what? We won't do it violently. We'll win democratically. Number one. Number two, the Nazis and Hitler are on the front page of German national newspapers. His name is known. Number three, this war hero, Iron Cross, Hitler is now known for being anti-Hitler. Most Germans at the time, don't forget, they still see it as a dictator going, he's not wrong, but we don't necessarily agree with what he did. That's why his sentence was so short, because ultimately most are going, yeah, he's not that wrong, is he? Okay, so good times at the moment. This is part one. You've gone from Kaiser as authoritarian to essentially a booming democracy. This is where we look at some of the exam questions that could come up with part one. So the exam questions are the interpretations, which is how are they different, why are they different, and are they convincing? Describe, explain, and most important factor. So let's have a look at this interpretation. Now, the first question you get asked, you see this interpretation, is how are they different? Look at the question wording before you do anything. Look at the question wording. How does B differ from A about the impact of reparations? Okay, easy, right? It's just saying how are they different? B to A. So what does A say? And then we can say how B is different. A says, as the terms of peace become known, we come to realize what it meant to lose a war against a dozen countries. The cost of reparations to be paid by a Germany which has lost its economic power was shattering. So straight away, now look on the other side. How do they differ? Step one, is A positive or negative about the impact of reparations? Well, it just said lost its economic power and it was shattering. So it's pretty negative. Okay, identify a quote. Well, Germany, which had lost its economic power, was shattering. There you go. Then you say, so sentence starter would be, interpretation A identifies the impact of reparations on Germans in the early 1920s as really negative. It says Germany had lost its economic power and it was shattering. Quote. And then you say, look closely at step three. On interpretation B, on the other hand, differs. And it's that key word differs. Look at the question, it says differ. The amount of students who don't put the word differ on the other hand, whereas B differs, if you don't do that, you're not getting out 1, 2 marks out of 4. By putting the simple answer to the question and using the question wording, you're into the 3, 4 mark out of 4 level. So you basically say how B is different. Now, what does B say? Reparations to be paid by Germany were agreed in 21. The sum of 6.6 billion, blah, 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 France demanded. But it was only half of what France demanded. It was less than the sum Germany would have demanded if they had won. And you know what? They were able to pay it off by 1984. So what does this tell us? Whereas interpretation B, use the question wording, differs from A about the impact of reparations on Germans in the early 1920s because it is not negative, it is positive about the, it is understanding of the impact of the reparations on Germans. It's saying it's not so high. You've got a quote which says the Germans would have demanded more. They were able to pay it off by 1984. Overall, therefore, B differs to A because B thinks the reparations are justifiable, whereas A thinks it's extremely harsh. And that's it. That's all you need to do for the 4 marker. Don't talk about who wrote it. Don't talk about own knowledge. That's all you need. It simply wants you to say, I acknowledge this is the message of A, this is the message of B, and they differ in this way. Now, this question, why do they differ? I want you to build on that. It's another 4 marker. They want you to build on it. So, okay, you already know what the message is. A is negative to reparations, B is fine with it. So, why do they say this? Well, A is the imposition of reparations of Weimar Republic. It's written in 76 by Egon Larsen, who had been a German in the 1920s. We've already talked about the 1920s, and we know that they saw the Treaty of Versailles as a diktat. So you need to say who it was. So use the question wording. A, interpretation A identifies the impact of the reparations in the early 1920s as negative, and this is likely because Egon, say the name, don't say the author. The amount of times students just say the author of A when they give the name is unbelievable. Say the name. The author, Egon Larsen, who is a journalist in the 1920s, lived through the hyperinflation crisis caused not only by the 1923 occupation of the Ruhr, but also the Treaty of Versailles. And you just add a bit of own knowledge, basically saying, well, this guy lived through it, therefore he would have known how horrible it was for many Germans. Then you say, don't forget to use the question wording. Whereas interpretation B differs to A because it is written by a British history textbook, which isn't going to have been written at the time. It was less. It has no experience of what Germans, ordinary Germans, went through, and it's simply identifying that as a history textbook, you're basically saying it's using information. It's not dealing with individuals. It's probably written far after, and that's all you would say basically. It's a bit. It's not a great. What's the word? It's not a great interpretation. The fact they say textbook is normally someone's name or something, a date. But in this case, you just say, look, history textbook. Therefore, it's going to be um, written after the event. It's going to use hindsight, the keyword. Anything after the event, it's going to be more balanced because it's a history textbook. And then don't forget, add your own knowledge about it, i.e., yes, you know what, they were able to pay it off. The golden age, actually, the economy was booming again. And then again, why might they differ? One guy lived through it, one guy is talking, or the history of the textbook is talking, written long after the war. Okay, so let's now look at this one, which is the convincing question. This is the third part of the interpretation. And essentially, what you're looking at is asking for 2 paragraphs as an 8 marker. In paragraph 1, you focus on the first interpretation. Paragraph 2, you focus on the second one. And essentially, the whole point is to say that's what the interpretation says, and this is my own knowledge. This is a test. Do you actually have own knowledge to add to what it's saying? So what does it say? The terms of the peace became known. We came to realize what it meant to lose a war. You can see it took 1 year to do the Treaty of Versailles at the Paris Peace Conference, to lose a war against 2 dozen countries. You can say that fighting against these countries is not so important. The cost of reparations, 6.6 billion. Germany had lost its economic power and was shattering. You can basically say here everything you want about the economic terms of the Treaty of Versailles. You can talk about the reparations, you can talk about the lost land of Versailles, you can talk about the lost land of the lost land of the Ruhr, all of these things, and basically say they were still recovering, they didn't get their loans repaid. All of these combined shows that, yeah, you know what? Plus, of course, didn't know the terms of a treaty. They weren't at the Paris Peace Conference. It was a diktat. That's all you need to add there. The second one, own knowledge. Essentially, what you're saying is, yeah, look, yes, it was really hard. Yes, they had these things, but actually, Germany forced a much harsher treaty on Russia, as an example. Also, they were able to recover, as seen by the Golden Age. And let's not forget, by 1939, Hitler had Germany back on its feet also. So twice they were able to do it. Overall, therefore, what we can see is that actually it wasn't so harsh. Now, some of you will know also the land loss, they're referring to the fact they only lost 13% of their land. So basically, the terms could have been a lot harsher. That's all you have to say. But at the end, if you want, you should do add a couple of lines saying this one is more convincing than the other one. But you can identify why it's slightly more convincing. The first one was written by someone there, so it's more convincing from a German's point of view, whereas B is more convincing from a non-German's point of view, something like that. Okay, so this is where we look at some describe questions, and you've got some nice ones here. Describe 2 problems the Kaiser's Wilhelm's government faced in ruling Germany, life-ordering Germans under the Kaiser, and the impact of World War I. So first of all, try to remember political, economic, social. What problems did the Kaiser face? Politically, what problem did he face? We said it was the rise of socialism, and that is shown through the rise of the SPD. It's the demand upon him by the socialist movement and the SPD to reform, to allow greater democracy, to allow more people to vote, to listen to the Reichstag. So that's one thing you would say, and lots of evidence to go with it. The second thing you would say is, well, he also was facing socialism and rise in workers demanding rights in their own economy, i.e., workers, and this is where you got to be careful. Don't talk about political rights. Talk about better pay, better conditions, no naval laws, pushing against his policies, pushing against his authoritarian rule in that regard. So more pay wanted, they want better conditions. That's the 2 things to focus on when it comes to that, and be specific for working class people. The second question, describe life for ordinary Germans under the Kaiser, is the exact same thing. However, you always want a positive and negative. So you say positively, upper class, they are in the Bundesrat advising. You've got the basically controlling this booming economy, making lots of money for the upper class. You could throw in also the Prussians in the military, having all the money from the naval law spent on their ships, the dreadnought, and a massive shining army and stuff like that. So loads of things you could say positively. Try to have one positive, one negative, if something like that comes up, just for breadth. Describe how World War I impacted ordering Germans. Again, look for the positive and the negative. This one is probably more negative, isn't it? So work on the social and the political. Kaiser abdicated. You've got a rise of democracy, that sort of thing. You'd also talk about the protest against the Kaiser, i.e. the mutinies. You could then talk about starvation, the orphans, the widows, all of that stuff. Now, remember the full market. It's point evidence, but don't think it's one piece of evidence. You've got to tell as much as you can in 5 minutes. Moving on. Okay, so here I've put you another interpretation question. It's the same thing. How does it differ? Why does it differ? Ultimately, and don't forget, which is more convincing, A or B, about the terms of Treaty of Versailles. Feel free to give it a go, but essentially, how does it differ? Look for the positive, look for the negative. Straight away an A. The treaty could have been engraved on the minds and hearts, feeling of rage and shame, all of that stuff. Therefore, that's the negative one. Second one, it's amazing, it's severe, but it's not more so. So that's the positive one. So that's your A and B. Don't forget the key words. This is how it differs. And they're talking about the response to the terms. Second question, why is it different? Well, there's Hitler's name. That should be a pretty big, obvious reason. Second one again, historian, hindsight. And that's the key bits that you just want to be saying. And remember, it's all about that. What is it hinting at? What own knowledge do you have? I'm just going to skip forwards a little bit to the explain question. Now, the explain question is essentially two field paragraphs, or for some of you, two peel paragraphs. Factor, evidence, explain, link to the question. Factor, evidence, explain, link to the question. So, explain the impact of the Treaty of Versailles on Germans is basically the describe questions we did before. Negative, negative. Question two, the changes of Weimar government impacted Germans. And again, go politically, but they have rights. They can vote, men, women, etc. The Reichstag is now listened to. The Bundesrat is now no longer just that. There's no more authoritarian Kaiser. It's democracy, proportional, etc. Second thing, you go to the social, i.e., they've opened up freedoms for men and women. There's opportunities and employment, that sort of thing. And that's the key thing to do, breaking of traditional norms for social values, jazz music, women's able to work, live on their own, not have to go get married, have sex, and being able to go out and all that sort of stuff. So you see in part three, it's again that sort of part question two and three there overlap a little bit in the same way. So remember what I was saying before about the describe question. Question three there, you want it to be, notice how it says impact on Germans. Don't forget the positives and negatives. And there's that picture and more obvious. So the first paragraph would be, it was brilliant, loads of fun, breaking of norms, independence, freedom, all of that stuff. But then you see on equally, second paragraph, however, not everyone enjoyed the golden age because there's people who are left behind from 1923 hyperinflation crisis, i.e. ex-soldiers, wounded, those who still had not managed to economically recover, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff. Now you can go positive, positive, but as I said, you kind of want to show the breadth of what you know. Don't forget, in the pictures there, what have you got? You've got the stereotypical Jewish person stabbing the German in the back, i.e. Weimar criminals. You've got the starving orphans picture, and you've got the Golden Age picture. Another interpretation, how does it differ? Ultimately, you got there the Stresemann era. Okay, what do we know? Good and bad. First one, it just says American loans pour in, unemployment fell. I'm just picking out words. Middle class benefited. Good, that's the positive one. B, what does it say? How's it different? It's dangerous loans. Okay, could not sell enough to repay them. Short-sighted, creating unemployment. It's it's clearly the negative one. Don't forget, he's asking how is it different. Say this one is, what does it say about Stresemann? It's positive towards the Stresemann. For example, it says this quote, whereas B differs to A because it is negative to the Stresemann era and specifically about the loans, doors, young loans. You can add that in there, add a quote, and then overall answer it. Why is it different? Well, let's look at the first person. An American journalist, well, it's American loan, so it's going to be for. He's also going to say, look, you've recovered. So he's going to be seeing the recovery, saying it's all good because he's American. It's also, he's writing it in 1925. So in other words, you've got to say it, golden age. And don't forget, don't just call him American journalist, Shearer, his book. The other guy, well, what do you know? He is a economist and president. What's his name? I'm looking for it. I can't see it. Ah, Schacht. Oh, what do you know? He was a Nazi minister, so he was against it. Why? Because, and this is the point, for marker, why is it different? He lived through the 1929 Great Depression and saw that Stresemann's loans were completely dependent on the sorry, the golden age of the loans would only work as long as America kept giving. 1929, they stopped. Now, this is the point. The convincing question again, all of that stuff, own knowledge, it's basically unpick what the interpretation is saying and saying, yep, this is what it says, and this is my own knowledge. It's sort of saying, and it's accurate because this actually did happen. It's sort of telling the story back through the interpretation using words like convincing and accurate. Lastly, looking at the last kind of question, it's the most important factor. It's the 12 marker, takes you about 15 minutes. They give you the two factors. They basically want to say, give me a feel factor for each, and then importantly, do you know how they connect? So, which of the following had a great impact? We've already done Treaty of Versailles, explain. 1923, same thing, explain. Now, the third paragraph, they want you to say this, which is, well, the hyperinflation crisis arguably had a bigger impact because it was short term and it was this. But it never would have happened without the Treaty of Versailles. So therefore, actually, Treaty of Versailles is more important because without it, there would have been no occupation of the Ruhr, there would have been no printing of the money because the second installment would have been needed, blah, blah, blah. They want you to make that point. Let's look at the second one. And again, okay, they're both pretty big impacts on the Weimar Republic, but consider this. In the third paragraph, you basically want to say, well, they survived the uprising and the putschs. They never really survived the hyperinflation crisis because, remember what we were just saying, they were dependent on Stresemann. In 1929, it collapsed. So you would say, basically, short term, and this is a key bit which many people forget, the uprisings literally scared the Weimar government out of Berlin because they lost control to Weimar where they were safer and better protected, which is a town just outside Berlin. But they survived it. Hyperinflation crisis, they survived it until the Great Depression when American loans stopped. They never really recovered from it. That's what your paragraph 3 is about. Question 3 there, which is the more important reason it was in danger, economic or political arrest, it's the exact same answer. They just about survived economic problems, and you can make that point. Even though it says between 1999 and 1923, you can still say it was a short-term fix that was never fixed as seen in 1929. Don't forget, it's the same point about they got pushed out. And it's basically saying, do you know what's happened? All that Spartacus, all that cap stuff, even the Nazi Munich putsch, and what impact did it have? And you say, yeah, look, actually, the Spartacus almost lost it. Cap putsch almost lost it. Munich putsch, it was a couple of years later, and you know what? They easily survived it. That's your answer in the paragraph 3. One more interpretation of part 1. Straight away, what is it about? Hitler shouted, close rank. Oh, most of us have seen this in class 100 times. If I can only get the boy to the car, he's saved. Clearly, Munich putsch being made to sound brilliant. So that's the positive one. B, how are they different? Remember, 4 marker. Well, he basically runs away, doesn't he? So that's the negative one. How are they different? A says Hitler's a hero. B says no, he's a bit of a coward, ran away. Quote, quote, they differ. Why? Lo and behold, one's by a Nazi, one's by Joachim Fest. Don't forget to say the name. Ordinary German, whose family were basically anti-Nazi. Convincing, it's all about adding your own knowledge about what's going on at the time. Okay, I hope that's been helpful to you, and I hope you'll try and find part 2. Thank you very much, and good luck if you're about to do an exam.